perspective. Today's going to be a little bit of a different type of a session, a little bit more off the cuff, less scripted. And as our VP of Sales stated, it's kind of a therapy session for engineers on things that have worked, things that haven't worked, and how taking this different perspective has made things easier and made things work better. So really excited to get into the discussion and to start talking through these things today. So just housekeeping items. We have a Q&A panel at any time in the presentation. You're welcome to jump into there and ask any questions that you have. We'll answer them either live or on chat, or may save them for the Q&A section at the end. So just to introduce today's panelists, we have Mike Ricci, the Vice President at Mass General Brigham. He's going to talk through his experience in coming across this concept of end user perspective monitoring and troubleshooting and how it has helped their institution. Also have Aaron and Dwayne from Provision Networks. They're going to talk through the impact of Wi-Fi issues and specific examples they've had as well in this topic. Justin and Dave are going to jump in from Spectralink, sharing some interesting before and after stories, as well as Jacob from Wyebot is going to give an actual demo of the Wyebot product and showcase some of the visibility insights that we are going to be talking through today. So with that, let's bring Mike up here. Mike, so great to have you on the call. I'm excited to be chatting with you today. Just to kick things off, do you want to introduce the company that you work for and your role there?
Sure. Thank you, Mike. So I'm with Mass General Brigham. As the slide represents, I'm the Vice President and kind of CIO over the academic medical centers. That's the AMCs. Those are the Mass General Hospital, Brigham and Women's Hospital. You've probably heard of those, as well as the specialty hospitals within the system. So that's Mass Eye and Ear, Spalding Rehab, and McLean. Also academic medical centers in their own right, as well as healthcare at home. So for those of you who don't or aren't familiar with Mass General Brigham as a whole, we are a large system. We're actually the largest employer in the state of Massachusetts. We've got over 80,000 or so employees. If you include persons of interest and other folks, we're over 125,000. So we're a pretty good sized player in the industry. We are pretty much leading the world in research as well, definitely in the United States. One of the largest research programs pretty much in the world. So we are kind of all things to a lot of people. My role here is as the vice president here. I oversee essentially the CIOs from the various entities. They all reported to me. We set direction for the organization on the digital side of things and work fairly closely with the business and the users.
Great. No, thanks, Mike. Again, it's an honor to have you on today and excited to be chatting. On the concept of end user perspective, monitoring, troubleshooting, it's kind of a newer concept in the IT space. In fact, you were one of Wyebot's first healthcare customers in the US. So just, I guess, starting things off, why did you start researching that? How did you come across this concept and what attracted you to it?
Sure. So this is going back quite a few years. This was 2018, 2019 or so. At the time, I was the CIO of Mass Eye and Ear. This was before Mass Eye and Ear was acquired by Mass General Brigham and became part of that system. We had a very small team supporting, 22 locations across the state and into Rhode Island. And we had, like, I want to say 2 network engineering folks doing a lot of that work. So a very small team. A very, very talented team, but covering a lot of locations with a very small team is, as you can imagine, very difficult. So looking for any type of tools that would really enhance our ability to provide superior service to our end users. I actually came across Wyebot at a conference. I was literally just kind of walking through a conference, and I stumbled across Courtney, our sales rep, VP of sales, I believe, over there now, and really just kind of was blown away by the capabilities at the time. And I know they've increased even since then of what Wyebot was providing. So I really saw this as a great way to expand our service and really cover all of our locations without actually having to hire a whole bunch more people to actually do it. So as we expand on the Wi-Fi side of the world, looking at, this type of solution is critical for anybody.
That's great. I guess on the concept of critical and the critical nature of Wi-Fi in general, talk through that. How critical is wireless in your environment, and kind of where do you see that going as the future moves on?
Yeah. So in healthcare, I mean, if you're looking at, point of care with patients, whether it's inpatients or ambulatory patients, having the ability to really be at bedside or with the patient, you need to have mobile devices, whether it's a laptop on a cart on wheels, whether it's a iPad or other mobile device. Everything's moving wireless. What your phones as well are, we're using our cell phones now to document in Epic, our medical record system. So everything is wireless these days, and it's more and more moving that way. I actually do envision another 5 to 10 years, there probably aren't going to be any non-wireless devices in the environments, especially in healthcare. The only thing that's wired, that will be wired at that point, will probably be the access points. Everything else will be wireless, all the endpoint devices, printers, everything. But as we get there, again, on the inpatient side, we're looking at being able to do positive patient identification in a bed, med reconciliation, med administration, everything that goes with touching a patient with the in rooms and everything else. You really need to be mobile. On the research side, again, similar needs, right? So across the board, really in all areas, administration as well, being able to be mobile and being able to have a consistent experience and uninterrupted experience on the Wi-Fi network is just critical to getting work done and taking care of patients.
Yeah, no, can totally see that. But I know though that issues do happen, issues do come up. So yeah, curious if you could dive into a specific example of a time when this end user perspective, monitoring, troubleshooting has helped your teams.
Yeah, one of the big things that comes to mind on that is actually in a research area. As you folks can imagine, right? You can only have so many bodies physically there monitoring live when problems are happening. When you're dealing with intermittent problems, it just becomes orders of magnitude more difficult. Every time we have a person at the site or at the location trying to monitor and see what's happening, the problem doesn't happen, right? It's typical. So something we've had an issue in a research lab area for several months. Just could not find what was happening, tried to replicate it, couldn't replicate it, but we kept getting reports and we'd show up, couldn't find the issue, we'd leave, come back and forth for months. So we put in a sensor in the area, Wyebot sensor in the area, and within, I want to say a day or two, we actually had found what the actual issue was and had it resolved. So huge impact. Just the amount of hours that we wasted not having the right tools to be able to correctly and quickly diagnose the issue is just mind-boggling. So having a solution like this has just been a game changer.
Oh, that's great, Mike. And I know that in healthcare environments, there are some sensitivities with what you can share, what you can't, but could you detail kind of what the issue was? Yeah, kind of what you did experience there that you found.
Um, it was impacting our ability, I'll say, in one of our labs to actually conduct research is all I can really say in certain ways. So, but yeah,
Yeah,
Wybot was able to help us resolve the issue very quickly, so we were able to get them back up and running and not lose
that's
anything, which
great.
was great.
No, thanks for sharing that example. And what advice would you give to other IT leaders that are considering end user perspective, monitoring solutions and approaches?
Yeah, and unless you're planning on hiring hundreds of bodies to physically be everywhere you need them to be at all times, you really need a solution like this. So long term, again, as we advance into the future and start moving more and more to a Wi-Fi type solution, whether it's Wi-Fi or cellular, et cetera, you really need to have these types of systems in place. And for the most part, looking through the industry, there really isn't anybody else that compares to Wyebot, as far as I'm concerned. And we've looked at a couple different vendors at times, and we've never really had anybody go head to head with them and come in even close to getting to their ability to provide solutions for us. So I would partner with a company like a Wyebot, make sure that they're moving in the same direction as you and as the industry, and just really it's a great partnership. The folks I've worked with, I have to say, have been fantastic. If there was something we needed added or additional functionality or anything, they were very quick to react and respond to us and provide us what we needed. So um, great to work with as well.
No, really appreciate that, Mike. It's been a pleasure to work with you and the team. And again, thank you for taking the time to jump on the call with us today. So, well, Mike, thank you. We'll let you jump. Mike has another meeting that he actually has to run to at this time. But but yes, thanks, Mike, and we'll transition over to the next point on the
I just
agenda.
want to say, if anybody does have a follow-up question, please feel free. Mike has my contact information. He's happy to, I'm sure, share it with you, and you can email me at any time.
Great. No, thank you, Mike.
Thanks
I will
all.
share that on the chat here for everybody, but yeah, I really appreciate that again.
Take care.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Awesome. We're going to switch over now to Provision Networks. Aaron Schweers is going to be speaking to us first. So, Aaron, we'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Mike. My name is Aaron Schweers with Provision Networks. I'm joined today by our Director of Technical Services, Dwayne Knott, and our President, Jack Mulligan. We have a nationwide wireless design engineering practice and a wireless MSP, and we utilize Wyebot sensors and agents. Like Mike, we found Wyebot at a conference, and also we're introduced to Courtney. Many years ago, we were approached by a client who said, "Hey, we love what the analysis and the reports that you provide us in your professional services practice, but it's only a snapshot in time, and we would like something that is more real time and proactive." So we were actually looking for a solution that did exactly what Wyebot does, and we're grateful to find a sensor that had the all of the capabilities that we were looking for. A lot of customers and people don't really see the true cost of wireless. A health system that we work with had conducted an internal study, and they found that 90% of their trouble tickets went unresolved. And they put a cost to each trouble ticket of $400 between the clinician's time, the help desk tech, the network engineer, all of them combined with their efforts was costing them $400 per ticket. They were averaging across their entire enterprise 300 tickets per month, resulting in a $1.4 million organizational cost. So I think to Mike's point, being able to diagnose a problem correctly the first time and not spend your cycles time after time after time trying to catch an incident in progress. It's really helpful and makes you more efficient as a support organization and a better end user experience. I personally think the wireless trouble tickets are underreported in the healthcare space just due to the nature of nursing and biomed teams. They are more likely to continue working through their tasks than to stop what they're doing and report a ticket. They'll see IT in the area a couple of days later and say, "Hey, I dropped a call over here," but you know the issue has passed by then. Today, we are offering a free Wi-Fi assessment to all attendees using the Wyebot Dex agent. If you have a set of floor plans and can document where you take some readings, we'll review that and give you an assessment for some things that you can do to make improvements in your wireless experience. Lastly, we have a relationship with Spectralink where we go on site and help them diagnose and resolve voice over Wi-Fi related issues. A Wyebot sensor would have the same tools and perform the same tasks as one of our wireless engineers. Spectrum analysis, packet captures, iPerf testing. Most customers do not have these types of tools available or the personnel on site that knows how to use them. So a Wyebot sensor can be very helpful. And with that, I'll pass the ball to Justin with Spectralink to discuss a deeper dive of ghost Wi-Fi issues that we've worked on together. We refer to them as ghost issues because they appear and can't be recreated, similar to when your car makes a funny noise and you take it to the mechanic and they can't find anything wrong. It can take days to recreate the issue and capture it.
Thanks,
So,
Aaron.
that to you, Justin.
All right. Well, thank you, Aaron. Aaron said, I'm Justin Borthwick. I'm the systems engineering manager here at Spectralink. Been with the company for almost 20 years, so I've got a lot of experience, but been in the IT industry for much longer than that, and been doing wireless for a very, very long time. I've got Dave Huddleston from my team joining me. We've got a lot of experience dealing with really unusual wireless issues in the field, and as I'm sure most people that interact with customers, end users in the Wi-Fi space, understand that it's the end user experience that really tempers how you approach an issue. And it's that end user experience that really helps us understand and approach an issue. And in most cases, what we from Spectralink tend to experience is that our device tends to be what we tend to call the canary in the coal mine. Whether the device itself is really at fault doesn't matter. It's the end user experience that says it's probably the device that's at fault. Well, that's fine. We don't really care whether you blame us or not. We're there to help. And so what we will generally do is take that end user experience and expand on that and try to understand it. So in an example that we've encountered, we had an end user that was reporting drop calls, choppy audio with their device. And we ended up spending a literal month on site with this customer trying to track down this problem. It was so intermittent. It was very challenging to reproduce. It was very challenging to capture. We worked with their reseller and a variety and the AP vendor. We built capture kits on carts with UPSs and all sorts of elaborate setups to try to capture this issue, only to find out later through in-depth analysis of the data we collected, it was an AP firmware issue. Well, come down the road a little bit further, we had a similar issue at another one of their locations, and immediately went, hold on, we're not gonna do this whole month on site thing again. Let's bring in Provision and let them do a deeper dive, and immediately identified a number of design issues with the Wi-Fi at this location, which was a newer location, but also allowed us to then get better tools in place. So one of the first things we identify when we work with any customer is what are their limitations? What are the challenges they're going to encounter? A lot of our customers are limited in resources, and it's understandable. Most customers, most businesses don't have the financial capability to have a huge staff, as Mike Ricci mentioned. He doesn't have the ability to put 1,000 people on site at all the time, and that's very understandable. So what tools then do you have available to you? How many end customers have a Wi-Fi packet sniffer on hand? Not many from our experience. And so having those tools available to you, having the resources available, the knowledge and the skill set to do the wireless packet analysis and capture, all of that rolled into one makes it very, very challenging. So then that's one of the reasons why we work so closely with people like Provision, is to have those expert resources at our fingertips. But as we've moved along, we've identified that having access to resources like Wyebot has significantly simplified those processes. One of the most common things I think we've run into is APs acting as packet analysis tools. So I'm sure many of you may have thought to yourself, well, I have a wireless sniffer, I have an AP that I can turn into a wireless sniffer. You do. However, that AP isn't going to capture layer one, and that's a challenge. A lot of the data we need happens at layer one, and that AP doesn't capture that. Also, you need somebody that's skilled and knowledgeable to be able to read that data and tell you what's wrong, what's actually happening. And that's where things like the Wyebot sensor really comes in handy, because it's got a lot of the tools in the back end to do some of that analysis for you and help you understand what you're looking at. So creating the issue, recreating the issue, capturing the issue, making sure you've got all the right data, being in the right place at the right time, understanding from your end user what is the actual issue they're experiencing and translating that into something that's reproducible. It's all pretty hard to do. Dave, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, like, so some of the things we notice when we're interfacing with, the end user, and, sometimes our end user is the telecom department, not just, the nurse or the practitioner on the other end. Generally speaking, we're working with the telecom guys because they're responsible for the phone, they're responsible for voice. So, when we start asking for packet captures and all these things, a lot of those folks are siloed off from the network team, right? They don't have the ability to even do these things. So then we have to get 2 or 3 other groups involved. Sometimes it's security, infosec, network, even a wireless subset of their network team to even begin to get packet captures. All those things just extend the problem longer and longer to resolution. So it just takes a really long time to get the data we need from a vendor to say, here's your problem. It's unlikely the device, it's this, that's firmware. So having these Wyebot devices on-prem where it's collecting data all the time, it captures the event when it happens, we can pull the data relatively immediately, analyze it and get back to them, it just shortens that time to resolution, like by days, if not weeks or months, as Justin pointed out. So yeah, we big help for us for having remote sensors essentially on the network that gives us the ability to quickly identify the problem. And Justin was right. They always point the finger at the end of device. The device dropped the call. The device is having bad audio, and that's, as we all know, nobody wants to be told they have the ugly baby. Their network is perfectly fine. It's excellent. But provision, Justin, we can all speak to that. We know that's not the case. If they're just running laptops, not streaming audio, they'll have a very different experience than walking around a hospital with audio streams. It's a very different environment, and the environment needs to be tuned appropriately for that use case.
Absolutely. So one of the other aspects of this that I would like to point out is that the level of effort put into solving any problem by all of the members of the customer staff that have to be involved tends to not only extend the amount of time it takes to resolve an issue, just because getting everybody, all the right people on a call, but one of the most common problems we've encountered is staying focused on the issue at hand. So being able to keep focused on reproducing the issue at hand and resolve that one issue without getting distracted by everything else that's happening in your facility can be really, really time consuming. Being able to have a sensor that doesn't have to talk to anybody other than just do its job can be immensely useful. So I think that's all I've got. I will turn it back over to Mike.
Well, I wanted to interject.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dwayne.
This is Dwayne from Provision Networks. So going back to what you were saying and getting rid of the perception of what's going on and what's actually fact. I'll give you, for instance, we were working with Spectralink on an issue that was intermittent. We couldn't really nail it down. The customer was going out there with actually Ekahau and doing surveys trying to identify the issue that was being reported, which was drop calls and choppy audio. And it was intermittent. So with the Wyebot, you're actually using it as a fact collector because you're dealing with the end user perception of what it is, and they're giving you their feedback. But you're actually looking for the facts and the historical information that you can get out of a Wyebot sensor. What it turned out to be is there was a scheduling desk next to some heavy automatic doors. When we actually looked at it and was able to pull back the curtains and see what was going on, these doors were opening and there was a huge amount of RF interference coming in that was being contained by those doors. And then when they'd shut, everything was coming back to normal. So using Wyebot as your actual fact collector and getting the historical information to when it actually happened helped to identify and resolve the issue. So I just wanted to interject that real quick for everybody.
Love that story, Dwayne. Thank you. Thank you. Great real world example. And to everybody, to Justin, Dave, Dwayne, Aaron, and Mike earlier, some really good examples of end user perspective, monitoring, troubleshooting. Interesting things coming out through that. Just the APs do provide data, and they are helpful on a lot of fronts, but there are also things, as Justin mentioned, the layer one detail, as well as just the always on availability, this packet capture, a huge component of Wyebot that is unique there, as well as just the fact that a lot of issues are intermittent, and having that always on visibility provides this insight that helps troubleshooting be accelerated significantly. So again, thanks for the team. Thanks for all your partnership. Thanks for these stories. And we'll provide their contact information after the session by email if you have any questions you want to follow up with them on. So for the last section of this, we're going to go into a deep dive on the Wyebot platform. A lot of great things that have been talked about today. We want to show you kind of hands-on what Wyebot does in these scenarios and the visibility that you have into the end user experience through the Wyebot platform. So bringing on Jacob from our sales engineering team, our sales engineering manager. I'm excited to have him kind of take on the next portion here. So Jacob, on to you.
Excellent. All right, great. Well, thanks everybody. This is a really interesting session, right? I've done a lot of webinars and I like this format, so hopefully we do more like this. But let me share my screen and we'll jump right into our platform, right? So here we go. Hey Mike, does my screen look all right for everybody?
Yes. Yep.
Cool. So yes, so we have we already talked about our technology, right? And this is what it actually looks like, right? So and one thing I just want to make clear for everybody, right? So we now have the sensor, which we've had for a while, and that's matured, and there's more and more features that have been added to that, and 6 gigahertz support and all sorts of good stuff there. But we also have agent software now. So I'll do a walkthrough of our agent software as well as I kind of run through this demo. And the agent software is what Provision is going to be using as part of their free network assessment. So that's something I think everybody's going to be interested in seeing here. But just to talk real quick about our sensors, right? So the way it works is you have these cloud managed hardware devices, right? And they actually look very similar to an access point, and they're purpose built. So, they have the multiple radios you need, they have the spectrum analysis, they have the packet capture. We talked all about that. And then they have fully featured client functionality where they act as an end user connecting to your network, and they support all the different, authentication methods you deal with, the radius, the captive portal, wired.1x, all this good stuff, right, is there. So once you have your sensor set up, they're going to automatically collect data. You get some nice reporting here on our cloud dashboard. So this is a group of sensors we're looking at. This is in our office in Boston. And we can see between these 5 sensors that are in our office, we see 54 wireless access points and 39 clients. And this is all data, just to be clear, right, that we're collecting over the air. Okay, we're not repackaging data that we're getting from a wireless controller. We're collecting our own data, and that's an important part of Wyebot's approach. Is we want to be that third party to give you a different perspective than you might get from the tools you already have. Okay. Now at this top level report, we also see the network test analytics. So that's a great way to understand the health, right? What's our pass-fail rate of the various tests that we've set up? How's the DHCP response time, DNS, radius auth, all that good stuff. But our interface is very, I would say, intuitive, right? Because if I click on this tile, now we'll see a more detailed version of this report where we break it out by SSID, and I can expand the SSID and then see all the individual tests that are running, right? So you get some nice, usable reporting here. But if I actually click into a sensor, let's take a look at our 6E sensor here. We now see this is today, right? Like the intermittent interference, or the service maybe affecting some of the we don't know the specifics, right? But some of that issue that was affecting the lab work. You have tests and reports and things like that can expose those issues. But one very unique factor to Wyebot is how we process our data and give you a list of problems and then also recommend a solution. So that could be anything from, say, a wireless configuration error, like we had talked about, identifying some of the best practice problems we see at maybe a new site. Like, I don't know, here's a kind of a classic example, right? The legacy data rates are enabled. Well, in reality, we want to shut these off because, an 802.11b client has been out of date for 20 odd years at this point. I really hope nobody's supporting these, but if you are, I guess, that's something you want to address. But we find this problem and then we recommend a solution. So we give you the action item that you would take, to your wireless team, or maybe schedule a change window, and then go through and, let's say, remove the 1, 2, 5.5, 11 meg data rates, right? So now you have the fix to the problem, and you're very quickly addressing something that, again, the traditional methods of finding this would involve either auditing line by line the whole config of your wireless controller, which can take ages, going on site, doing a packet capture yourself, hiring a consultant, all this stuff, right? We want to minimize that effort by giving you the analysis just right here, right? And this is another thing I want to talk about is the fact that we have historical data. So, of course, you can catch things live with our sensor, but I think where it becomes very useful is when you have these deployed and you have historical logs to go back through. So, at a point in time, perhaps there's a transient event, like maybe a client failing the .1x authentication. And if we click on this, we can see what happened, right? We had a couple, I guess, sensors in our lab that maybe have misconfigured credentials that failed to authenticate. And that's a transient issue that the Wyebot system catches automatically and saves for you in a nice interface here. Okay. So that's all passive analysis, right? A couple other advanced parts of our passive analysis include RF analytics. So if I click on this, we can see the airtime use. So we talked about layer 1 problems, right? Well, a great thing about the Wyebot platform is we do continuous spectrum analysis. So not only do we give you call it the layer 2 breakout of what percent of traffic is management control data, but also, how much interference we have. What's the noise floor look like? If I change this graph to non-Wi-Fi interference, we can actually see reports where we detect possible interferers. Or I'm going to see if I can find another example here. Like, oh yeah, Bluetooth. So if we have a source of interference that's something we can pattern match, like a microwave oven, Bluetooth, cordless phones, things of that nature, right? We identify that as well, which removes a lot of the needed expertise out of analyzing, spectrum analysis. And of course, this also carries out for a month, right? So that type of data is very useful. Last point here I want to mention, when we talk about passive features of the sensor, that's very important to understand, is under advanced here. So we talked about packet captures, right? So the sensors really work around analyzing packet captures continuously. And there are cases, of course, where you need that raw data for your own troubleshooting. So you can grab that from the sensors. And what's nice about our method here is the packet captures are actually saved on the internal storage. So if you have sensors that are deployed permanently as part of the infrastructure, now you have a packet capture buffer, so you can go back in time and find an issue. So we talked about putting APs in monitor mode and maybe going out there with an Ekahau Sidekick or a laptop or whatever it is. Well, these are reactive things, and you have to put the AP in monitor mode at the right time, pull the capture, and hope you catch the problem. Whereas with Wyebot, you have the capture in the buffer, so you go back in time, retrieve that, and then of course you can get to that root cause much more quickly and without rolling a truck and all this good stuff, right? So that's one of the many benefits of having solutions like this in place. Now, talking about another very important part of our product line is these what we call network tests, and this is where the sensors or the agents, we'll talk about that as well, are running different tasks that you would set up to say load a website or do a speed test or maybe do a video call or a voice call, and these of course help you understand the end user experience, because our products are literally being end users, right? So if I click into I don't know, maybe let's look at our WebEx test here, right? So what's happening is we have this scheduled analysis. I think in this case, we're doing it pretty infrequently, like once every 4 hours, but we could configure that, okay, to run it more or less often if we'd like. As part of this test, okay, our sensor is actually making a network connection. So it's looking at the radius response time. It's actually looking at the DHCP experience and measuring how long that would take. Then once we get connected, here we're using a WebEx profile where we're actually doing a bi-directional packet stream, looking at the packet loss, the latency, the jitter, and then that helps us understand, like, do we have upload packet loss, download packet loss, jitter, latency problems, and these things, of course, we talk about, like Spectralink, I'm sure knows, right? Real-time communication is extremely sensitive, and honestly, the troubleshooting you do for loading a website, which uses standard TCP traffic, isn't really going to tell you what the problem is. So that's why we have all this different variety of tests you can run, right? So very, very flexible. I think we have, what is it, 12 tests now that you can run, iPerfs in here. So some of your standard network toolkit, we have traceroute, things like that. And then some tests that are more, let's say, geared towards Wyebot's methodology of just give you one place to look and tell you where the problem might be. Link Doctor is a great example of that. I'll actually jump back into a test graph and show you the visual of this because it's a little bit more interesting in this way, where the test is actually doing your basic steps of, it's almost like a trace route out to the internet, right? From your local connection out to the internet, in the sense that we look at the gateway response time, DNS response time, internet access, resolving a host name, right? So making sure all these critical services are working. And then, of course, if there's a problem, we plot on this graph where the problem might have happened. Like we had here some cases where DNS resolution failed, right? And then, of course, we couldn't ping a host name because we had a DNS timeout. So this type of analysis is meant to just give you very quick, right, time-saving effort of, like, you don't have to work with a user or send somebody out, right? We have the idea of where these problems happen. Of course, we have all these other more advanced tests that expose the various potential, sources of problems there. Another thing that's important to understand with the way our sensor runs tests is you have the interface configuration where you can choose to run tests on the wired connection the sensor has, the Wi-Fi connection. You can actually do both if you want to save yourself a little bit of time here when you're configuring things, which is great because you have a comparison as well. That's important to understand is, the wired performance often precludes the Wi-Fi performance, right? If you have bad speed on the wired connection, don't waste your time troubleshooting Wi-Fi, right? Fix that first, okay? Now, when you're doing a Wi-Fi test, I do want to mention our AP selection options, because this is a bit of a unique part about our product, where you can have your sensors automatically just connect to the AP, which really just means act like a normal user, use the client driver, connect to the closest AP. Now, we do have more advanced options if you want to do specific AP testing, right? Where you're then, choosing an access point in the area and choosing a specific radio. So every time the test runs, we're targeting that access point. And that's very useful when you think about some ad hoc troubleshooting and identifying, if you have a specific radio, having a problem. And we have an automated way to sort of do that at scale, which is called our multi-AP test, where you would choose the number of APs you want the sensors to attempt to connect to, which could be up to 10. Now, depending on your density of your network, right, you might not be able to see 10 APs at a reasonably good signal strength, so maybe it would be 4. You have an RSSI cutoff, so there's a little bit of a safety margin there. But the point is, this will automate that analysis where over time, we've attempted to connect to all the radios in the environment. And then you find out if you do have an AP that just doesn't accept the connection for whatever reason, right? Maybe the DHCP failed, maybe the AP doesn't respond to our auth request. We have error reporting that tells us where the problem happened. But again, I keep going back to automation and simplicity. That's kind of the goal with this is get this thing set up. Also enable alerts, right? Our platform supports alerting, and now you have a system in place that's hopefully saving you a lot of time, effort, and in the long-term money, right? When you think about the cost of doing these things manually. So that's in a nutshell the sensor product. Of course, there's more nooks and crannies we can get into, and I think if everybody's interested, we should or anybody's interested, reach out to Provision Networks, and we're happy to help accommodate the network assessment we talked about, right? But let's jump over and talk about our agent software, because this is maybe a newer thing for some people who have been following Wyebot for a while. So yeah, we now have an agent which runs on your actual user's computer, right? And using that connection we have now to that computer, it'll report into the cloud telemetry about the network status, right? Whether the client's online, offline, basic things like that, of course, we can get. But what's more interesting is the advanced Wi-Fi analysis we're able to do, as well as running some of those synthetic tests on the actual user machine. So I'll jump into that just to kind of explain the architecture of it a little bit, right? So the agent software is running as a background service on the client computer. So it's not interrupting the end user in any way, right? We don't actually even give you a front end at this time for the end user, right? We want to give you this data passively sent to the cloud, right? And that's been an important part for our customer base, because they want to be able to scale this without having it be another thing end users blame, right? It's very much a passive data collection method here, right? So anyway, once you have that installed, you'll find the devices registered to the dashboard. You can get a list view of here to see all those devices. You can assign labels to them, right? We have our sales team, our engineering team, our marketing team. Here's Mike, right? And we also have a charts view, so you can see nice visuals of, let's say, what the breakdown is, the band usage, or maybe you want to filter by driver version, right? And then potentially you'll see one driver version is more inclined to use the 2.4 band or the 6 gig band or whatever the case is, right? It's very useful to have this type of analysis at scale. But if we zoom in on a client, let's look at Courtney here. This is Courtney, our VP of Sales, right? I think many people know her at this point. We have this screen here. Now, at a glance, right, a lot of this looks like the sensor, right? We have a similar methodology of, calling out the issues that might be affecting the network from a config level, like best practice violations, channel width problems, Wi-Fi printers in the area, classic stuff that is very good to be aware of. Access points as well, where we're taking the scan data from the client and building a list of access points. And what's nice about this, right, is we see from the client's point of view, right, how many APs that client can see, what the signal strength is, which AP they're actually connected to. In some cases, in fact, like this right now, this client's actually not connected to the AP with the strongest signal strength, right? So kind of a classic, sticky client problem. I mean, the signal strength on the current AP isn't bad by any means, so the client's not going to be inclined to roam, but this is a very common thing you're going to be able to see now with the agent. And I'll also show you here historical data is present. So we can go back in time for a full month and see anywhere this client was. An important thing with agent software, by the way, right, is not your clients that you support, especially if you're on more of a help desk team or an IT in general, right? The clients aren't always in a network that you control. They're working from home, they're working at a hotspot, coffee shop, whatever it is. And if they have the agent installed and their client has an internet connection, we'll be able to see the health of their connection wherever they are. So keep that in mind, right? This is something that's going to scale across, anywhere, right? That your clients are operating. So anyway, right, moving on a little bit to some of the more advanced features here. Events. I really like this event logging because this is exposing driver level statistics. And this actually goes to a partnership we have with Intel. Okay, so especially, we have this data for all Wi-Fi radios, but Intel especially, we get some extremely useful roaming reasons that the driver is actually reporting to us via an API. So if I go in here and I search for roam, right, just to give you some good examples of this. So here's all the roaming that happened for this client over the past week. And when we get a roam, this reason helps us understand what drove the client to actually disconnect from one AP and connect to another one, right? And so some classic examples are like better AP found. Well, that means the driver actually found a preferential AP and chose to move to it, okay? Which is maybe a little bit different. Here's a little trace we can look at, right? We see also afterwards there was a task roam by OS. What does that mean? That means Windows, the OS in this case, came back and said, no, I want to connect to a different AP. And then the driver said, no, I have a better AP, right? And the OS and the driver are fighting. And this is one of these things where you see a client bouncing around between one AP and another. And if you've ever troubleshot this with the basic tools of your wireless controller or even a passive capture, you don't see the client's thought process, if you will. So this is exposing a real problem here. And perhaps a fix would be to go into the OS settings, or I think Intel gives some very good driver settings and adjust the roaming aggressiveness and things like that to prevent this little conflict from happening. So anyway, one example, right? But this is a very important use case of the agent. And honestly, I get in this event log very often and just root out issues that previously I've just taken ages to find, right? Like we already talked about. One other thing with the agent, though, is the testing. So you have these tests, right? And this is where you have like websites, or we actually have a Teams test with the agent where we do a simulated Teams call running here on a schedule. Of course, very similar to the sensor test. What's different here? No, in some sense, the sensor, I'll say, is a little bit more robust with the testing because it's able to disconnect, reconnect, and do all this further analysis. Now, obviously, we don't want to disconnect your client, reconnect your client, right? So what we're looking at here would be the active connection of that client from that client's computer. Let's say, can they reach a website? If you're in a hospital, right? Can it get to the Epic Systems platform, right? I mean, you can customize what the endpoints are for the testing, but it's still very useful, right? Because you can just look at the historical log, or there's actually a little play button here to run these tests on demand, so you don't need to wait for the scheduler to get a result in. So this is, again, it seems simple at first when you look at it, but when you think about what you're able to find with this data, it becomes very enticing, especially if you have, a lot of, help desk stuff, right? Where working with an end user isn't always preferred or even possible, right? Of course, having this on mobile device carts as well, very important. So as you roam around, you can see if that connection is dropping. So yeah, the agent, super interesting. And I do just want to remind everybody, right, the Provision Networks initiative here to do a free assessment with the agent software. I really encourage you to take them up on that, right? It's a low lift in terms of actually getting this agent installed, I'll say. I mean, you literally just run the installer and, it'll provision for you. So there's not a lot of setup you need to do. And, often you'll be surprised at what you find, right? So, yeah, that's a high level kind of demo of our platform. If you want to learn more, obviously, you can reach out to Provision Networks, or you can schedule a demo with us directly for, just to see the platform more detail and find a use case. But yeah, I'll pause here. Anything, Mike, that you want me to touch on that I missed? I want to make sure that I'm being
Yeah, well,
thorough
let's
enough here.
no, it's a great segue going into the kind of Q&A portion, but if you want to keep your screen
Cool.
share in case anything else
Yeah,
is
I'll keep it up.
relevant. But thank you, Jacob. Great overview of the platform, and always love seeing that. A couple questions that came up in chat is what OSs is this available on the Dex agent?
Yeah, good question. So at the present moment, the Dex agent is for Windows. Okay, so it's a Windows product right now. The Mac version is in the works as we speak, so we hope to have that. I think sometime next year. I would think that's kind of the plan there. But right now, yeah, Windows is the OS for the agent.
Cool. Other question that came up is the subscription model for Dex. Is that included in the sensor license, or is it a separate license for the Dex agent?
Yeah, so the subscription model, they would be separate subscriptions, but it's very straightforward when you think about how the subscriptions work, right? So it's a simple per agent, per sensor, per year, right? So your sensors are one license, agents are another, but it's not very complicated, right? It's like, you want, 500 agents, that's 500 licenses per term, pricing determined on scale, that type of thing. But yes, that's how that works.
Cool. Thanks, Jacob. And it's a cool concept. You have both the physical sensors on-prem, you have the agents that move around, like hybrid workforce is such a thing these days, they're not always on your own owned networks, but can you kind of talk through like why both? Like why do you want both an agent and why would you want a sensor on site? And I know you have stories where it has been helpful to have both of those on hand.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Yeah. So I would say the sensor, as I had mentioned, right, it's a purpose-built device. So it's got all these radios. It's got this packet capture capability. It's built on a custom, OS. We can do all sorts of very interesting stuff with it. So what that means is it's got the depth of information you really need when you think about doing that deep dive troubleshooting. And the other thing I'll say is the sensor really fits in those networks where you control, right? So your corporate offices, your warehousing, whatever it is, where you actually have access to fix, some of the config problems you might identify. Sensors are very great for that type of analysis, right? The dedicated infrastructure. Whereas the agent, well, obviously the agent works with your hybrid workers or your remote workers because the sensor, you're not going to send a sensor to everybody's house necessarily. We have had some people do that, but I would say it's, not something that a lot of our customers do. So having the actual agent on the device means you can monitor them anywhere. And what I will say is the agent sees some things the sensor can't, or nothing else can, right? Which would be that, like I talked about, the driver level behavior, the roaming reasons. So using the two products alongside each other, just talk about one big thing I've run into recently was I saw this sort of trend of roaming on the agent logs where I think it was the 11V. Let's see if I can just jump in here and try to find an illustration of this. So if I search for 11V, I got to back out a little bit. So this type of stuff, right? 11V recommendation. What does that mean? Well, that's Wi-Fi speak for APs load balancing the client, right? So I found this on the agent. And I was like, well, that's weird, but there's a case open with a vendor. Maybe we need to get some actual packet capture data. So that's where the sensor is very useful because it has, as I mentioned, the historical packet capture. So I matched up the timestamps here. I matched up the channel, pulled the capture, and now I saw the inside of that, experience, meaning from the client point of view, and the outside of that experience from the packet point of view. So now we could map these things up. And in fact, it did align, and we realized the problem was load balancing was enabled on a profile that, we had thought was disabled, right? And these types of things can happen with how complex wireless configuration can be. So, yeah, that's my spiel there.
Oh, thank you, Jacob. Thanks for answering that. And yeah, a lot of the questions were answered here in the Q&A panel. Last question that we had was just a little more detail on the assessment, what that looks like, what your team would do. So Aaron, do you want to kind of jump in and just give a little more color on what engagement would look like on the free assessment that you're offering?
Certainly. So we will work with you to install the agent, identify areas that maybe you have some concerns about today, or are having some issues, and then we'll work with you to develop some tests and ways to capture some data and help you resolve issues, and of course we'll make recommendations of best practices and things that we think will improve your end user experience.
Love it. Thank you, Aaron. And thanks again for offering that. So yeah, you'll have them hand in hand to install the agent and set up these tests and just really analyze what might be happening on your network. So feel free to email Aaron there if you have any questions or interested in that. Well, again, thanks everybody for joining today. Thanks to the panelists. It was a great discussion. I learned a lot. Grateful again for the partnership that we have with all of you. And please do fill out the survey that you'll get here at the end as we close out this session. But thank you for joining. Have a good rest of the day. We'll see y'all.